Welcome back to the channel where stories change the way you think and help you learn English naturally. Today, I am going to tell you about a boy who was called dumb, lazy, and a lost cause. A boy who couldn't speak until he was 4 years old. A boy whose own teachers told him he would never succeed at anything. But that boy grew up and became the most famous scientist in history. His name? Albert Einstein. How did a poor boy with a speech delay become the man who taught us how the universe works? How did a child who seemed so behind end up changing physics forever? This story isn't just about science. It's about fighting against a world that gives up on you. It's about a boy who was too poor to pay attention in class, but too brilliant to stay invisible. And as always, this story is a powerful way to improve your English. With clear storytelling, rich vocabulary, and real-life lessons, you will learn while you listen. Now, let's begin from the very start. In the year 1879, in the small city of Ulm, in Germany, a baby boy was born to a Jewish family. His name was Albert. His mother, Pauline, looked at him with worried eyes. Something was wrong. Albert's head was unusually large. Very large. Bigger than other babies. The doctors tried to calm his parents, but fear stayed in their hearts. Days passed, then months, and then years. But the little boy didn't speak. His parents waited. No words. They called his name. No answer. When Albert was 4 years old, his family sat down for dinner one evening. Everyone was quiet. And then, a small voice broke the silence. "The soup is too hot." His parents stared, their eyes wide. They couldn't believe it. Their son had finally spoken. But why so late? Why had he waited so long? Albert simply said, because up to now, everything was in order. From that moment, his parents understood one thing: their son was different. He did not follow the normal path. He watched. He waited. He thought. And when he finally spoke, it was only because he had something to say. This was the first sign that Albert Einstein was not like other children. When Albert turned 6, his parents sent him to school. They hoped he would do well. But school was a nightmare for young Albert. The classrooms were strict and cold. Teachers shouted orders. Students repeated answers like little machines. Albert hated it. He hated memorizing facts. He hated doing the same thing again and again. His mind was too active, too curious, too alive to sit still and obey. His teachers didn't understand him. "This boy will never amount to anything," one of them wrote. "He sits in the back, staring out the window. He is lazy and slow." Another teacher once said to his face, "Einstein, you will never be a success. Your presence in the classroom destroys the respect of the other students." Imagine that. A grown man, a teacher, telling a child he is worthless. How many dreams have been destroyed by such words? But Albert was not destroyed. He was hurt, yes. He was lonely, yes. But deep inside him, something stronger lived, a burning curiosity about the world. At home, things were also difficult. Albert's father, Hermann, and his uncle, Jacob, ran a small electrical engineering business. They dreamed of creating new machines that would bring electricity to the world. But money was always short. The family was not rich. In fact, they often struggled to buy food. Still, Hermann gave his son a gift that would change everything. When Albert was 5, sick in bed, his father handed him a small compass. Albert's eyes opened wide. He moved the compass left and right. But the needle always pointed north. Why? What invisible force was controlling it? He trembled with excitement. Something was hidden behind the world. Something powerful, silent and invisible. And he wanted to understand it. That compass was the beginning of everything. When Albert was older, his family's business failed. The Einsteins lost almost everything. They packed their bags and moved to Italy to start a new life. But Albert could not join them right away. He had to stay in Germany to finish his studies. Alone, without his family, the boy fell deeper into sadness. He was just 15 years old. The school felt like a prison. Every day, the teachers reminded him he was a failure. He felt the walls closing in. So he did something bold. He went to a doctor and asked for a letter saying he was too sick to stay in school. And then another doctor, a mathematician, gave him a paper saying he was ready for advanced studies. With these two papers in his hand, young Albert left the school. He walked out of those heavy doors and never returned. He traveled across the mountains to Italy. When he saw his family again, his mother cried. His father hugged him tightly. Albert was free. But freedom was not easy. The family had very little money. Albert had no diploma, no job, and no clear future. He spent his days walking the streets, thinking, dreaming, reading. He taught himself mathematics and physics from books. At the age of 16, he wrote his first scientific paper. He was not yet in university. He was just a poor boy with a restless mind. But he needed a path. He applied to the Swiss Federal Polytechnic in Zurich, one of the best technical schools in Europe. He took the entrance exam. And he failed. Not in science. Not in mathematics. But in the other subjects, history, languages, geography. He did not study what they wanted him to study. He was too focused on what he loved. The school saw something in him, though. They allowed him to come back after a year of preparation. Albert worked hard. He went to a small Swiss town, finished his secondary education, and finally passed the exams. In 1896, Albert entered the Polytechnic in Zurich. He was now a student in one of the finest universities. But his troubles were far from over. At the Polytechnic, Albert met Miliva Maric. She was a young Serbian woman, the only female student in the physics department. She was brilliant, serious, and, like Albert, deeply in love with science. They began to study together. They shared books, ideas, and dreams. They fell in love. But Albert's professors grew tired of his attitude. You see, Albert never learned to follow blindly. He challenged his teachers. He skipped lectures. He studied what he wanted, not what he was told to study. One professor, Heinrich Weber, became so angry with Albert that he refused to write him a letter of recommendation. You are a clever boy, Einstein, he said. But you have one great fault. You do not let yourself be taught. Because of this, when Albert graduated, he could not find a job. His friends got positions as assistants and researchers. Albert got nothing. No university wanted him. No professor helped him. Days turned into months. He was hungry, poor, and often hopeless. Miliva became pregnant. They had a daughter, but the child was given up for adoption, a deep wound in Albert's heart that he rarely spoke about. At the lowest point of his life, a former classmate, Marcel Grossman, reached out a hand. His father knew the director of the Swiss Patent Office in Bern. A small job was available, a patent clerk, 3rd class. Albert applied immediately. He was accepted. In 1902, at the age of 23, Albert Einstein sat down at a small wooden desk in a dusty office. His job was simple: read patent applications and decide if they should be approved. Day after day, he read about clocks, machines, and electrical devices. The pay was enough to live, but nothing more. To an outsider, it looked like Albert had given up on his dreams. But the truth was very different. The job at the patent office was a hidden gift. The work was not difficult. It left his mind free. And in those quiet hours, Albert's imagination began to travel deeper into the universe than anyone had ever gone before. With no laboratory, no money, and no support, he began to ask the biggest questions. What is light? What is time? What is space? He formed a small study group with friends. They called it the Olympia Academy. They met in a small cafe, drank cheap coffee, and talked about the great mysteries of science. Albert's mind was on fire. And then came the year 1905, the miracle year. In just one single year, this unknown 26-year-old patent clerk published 4 scientific papers that changed the world forever. The first paper explained the photoelectric effect, proving that light is made of tiny particles called photons. This later won him the Nobel Prize. The second paper proved that atoms are real. Before Einstein, many scientists still doubted atoms existed. He gave the mathematical proof. The third paper introduced the special theory of relativity. It said that time is not fixed, it can slow down. The faster you move, the slower time goes. No one had ever said such a thing before. And the fourth paper, the fourth paper. It was a small note, just 3 pages. But it gave us the most famous equation in history. E = mc squared. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. In other words, matter can be turned into pure energy. The stars, the sun, the entire universe, it all connects in this simple, beautiful equation. A man with no laboratory, no university, and no money had just rewritten the laws of physics. But no one noticed. For years, Albert's papers sat quietly in scientific journals. The world wasn't ready. And Albert? He went back to his desk at the patent office, day after day, still the same anonymous clerk. But slowly, the greatest scientists of Europe began to read his work. They were astonished. They invited him to conferences. They offered him teaching jobs. At last, Albert Einstein became Professor Einstein. And then came the year 1905, the miracle year. In just one single year, this unknown 26-year-old patent clerk published 4 scientific papers that changed the world forever. The first paper explained the photoelectric effect, proving that light is made of tiny particles called photons. This later won him the Nobel Prize. The second paper proved that atoms are real. Before Einstein, many scientists still doubted atoms existed. He gave the mathematical proof. The third paper introduced the special theory of relativity. It said that time is not fixed, it can slow down. The faster you move, the slower time goes. No one had ever said such a thing before. And the fourth paper, the fourth paper. It was a small note, just 3 pages. But it gave us the most famous equation in history. E = mc squared. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. In other words, matter can be turned into pure energy. The stars, the sun, the entire universe, it all connects in this simple, beautiful equation. A man with no laboratory, no university, and no money had just rewritten the laws of physics. But no one noticed. For years, Albert's papers sat quietly in scientific journals. The world wasn't ready. And Albert? He went back to his desk at the patent office, day after day, still the same anonymous clerk. But slowly, the greatest scientists of Europe began to read his work. They were astonished. They invited him to conferences. They offered him teaching jobs. At last, Albert Einstein became Professor Einstein. He married Mileva. They had 2 sons. But Albert's personal life was not easy. He was a dreamer, not a family man. His mind was always somewhere else, chasing the next great truth. In 1915, after years of struggle, Albert published the general theory of relativity. This theory said that gravity is not a force. It is a bend in space and time. A planet like Earth does not pull you down, it curves the space around it, and you simply fall into that curve. The world said, "Prove it." Albert Einstein's story is not about a boy born with special gifts. It is about a boy who was told he would never succeed. A boy who was different, who was quiet, who was poor, and who was seen as a failure. But that boy gave us a new understanding of time, space, and energy. He showed us that imagination is more important than knowledge. He showed us that a person who never stops asking questions can change the world. From a speech-delayed child to the greatest mind in modern history, Einstein's life teaches us many lessons. Don't let others define you. The world will try to put you in a box. Break that box. Curiosity is a superpower. Albert never lost his childlike wonder. That wonder was his real genius. Failure is not the end. He failed his entrance exam. He was rejected from every university. He worked a simple desk job for years. But he never stopped thinking, learning, and dreaming. And here is my final thought for you. Albert Einstein once said, "Everybody is a genius." But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. You are not stupid. You are not a failure. You are a learner on a journey. Perhaps right now you are struggling with English. Perhaps you feel like you are too slow, too old, or too far behind. But maybe you are just a fish being asked to climb a tree. Find your water. Find your path. And swim with all your heart. Thank you for listening to this story. If it moved you, if it taught you something new, please hit that like button and subscribe. Let me know in the comments, what part of Einstein's life surprised you the most? I read every comment. Until next time, keep learning, keep dreaming, and never let anyone tell you that you cannot succeed. Bye for now.